Hey folks, this is Dave Schneider,
This is Dustin Ponder.
and we are back on the Worker Power Hour YouTube channel. We have something very special planned for y'all. We've been off the air for a little while. As most of you probably know, my brother here, Dustin Ponder, was targeted by UPS management. Some of the worst anti-union activity, just a textbook example. And because of your solidarity and the solidarity of our fighting Teamster brothers and sisters in Jacksonville, we got his job back. Since that time, we've been on the grind trying to turn a vote no out on the UPS contract. And as most of y'all probably know, this week is very significant for UPS Teamsters. On September 11th, ballot information is going to be going out to each and every one of our homes, where you'll get a code in the mail, and then by phone or online, you'll be able to vote yes or no on the contract, and yes or no on any supplements or riders that you may have regionally or locally. To that end, our glorious reappearing here today on the Worker Power Hour, we have something very special planned for y'all today that we are calling the top 5 worst vote yes arguments, how to defeat them, and ultimately what we should demand out of a good UPS contract.
That's right, Dave. We've been sitting back while we've been out flyering, campaigning, talking to Teamsters about the contract. And something that really annoyed me was this vote yes video stuff that's been coming out of actually local 174 in Seattle. They have Jamie Fleming's financial analyst. They have some college yuppie that's basically trying to peddle this contract to high seniority people and say vote yes. So we wanted to debunk all the myths that basically the officers, the union bureaucrats, and the sellouts have been putting out there to try and convince high seniority people that this piece of shit contract is a good deal. So we're going to run through it, starting off with the number 5 reason that this is a great contract and you should vote yes, is the argument that this is a great deal for UPS part-timers. Dave, tell us a little bit about this kind of myth that this contract is going to help out our part-time members.
Well, look, Dustin and I are both part-timers. We're both elected shop stewards. Here's the bottom line. This contract is a disaster for part-timers. I'm going to talk about a couple of the arguments here that we hear and why it's such garbage. For one, there's no bump raises in this contract for existing part-timers. It's an absolute insult. It's a slap in the face to anybody with seniority. And what I've been saying to people, and it's true, the more seniority you have, the bigger of a slap in the face this truly is. UPS claims we can't afford to raise people's wages by $3 or $5 for every part-timer in the country. They are raising the starting wage to $13 an hour, and they want new hires to think somehow they're doing them a favor and that this is a great argument to vote yes. And then they say, look, if we raise part-timers' wages too high, this is actually an argument we've heard from mostly union officials. If we raise part-timers' wages too high, there won't be an incentive for part-timers to go full-time. What a doozy. Let's go ahead and take each of these, okay? UPS can't afford $5 bump raises for existing employees. Okay, because let's be clear, originally that was the demand, was to get $15 an hour starting wage for part-timers and catch-up raises for the folks who've been here. Okay, UPS claims we can't afford that. Let's go ahead and do some math here. UPS made $6 billion in profit, okay? And that's not revenue, that's profit. After you take out from revenue all of our wages and benefits, paying the utilities to keep the lights on, reinvesting in the company, fixing equipment, so on and so forth, that money that is left over is $6 billion. Now that includes $1 billion that this company got out of the tax bill that just passed. Okay, so they got $6 billion. Let's do some more math here. There are, if we say, and it's a little tough to get solid estimates, so I'm going to kind of go on the high end here. So 220,000 employees at UPS, let's say 60% of those are part-timers. A little bit on the high end from what I've read, but let's just assume that. That means there's approximately 132,000 part-timers at UPS. Okay, so let's take 132,000 times $5, okay, which is the bump raise we're asking for, times 5 hours per day, times 5 days a week, times 52 weeks in a year. You know what that comes out to? $858 million. Now, some of y'all are probably saying, damn, that's a high number. That probably sounds pretty high until you realize that is only 14.3% of UPS's profit last year. Again, not revenue, profit. The money that's left over that would go to shareholders or the CEO or whatnot. And this is the high-end estimate of how much it would cost, because as you all know, Part-timers are only guaranteed in the contract 3.5 hours a day. So 14.3% of UPS's profits would change every part-timer in the country's life tomorrow with $5 bump raises. Fact is, UPS can't afford this. They just simply don't want to. Second thing, full-timers, and I want you to listen up. If part-timers' wages go up and actually get closer to full-timers' wages, you all are actually going to benefit from that. You know why? Because the company isn't going to be able to attract part-timers into full-time jobs where they're making them slave away 70 hours a week with no 9-5 rights and flagrantly violating the contract and harassing them. No, in fact, what's going to happen, the company will have to make full-time jobs better, the conditions better, in order to attract part-timers who are better paid into those positions. So, to be honest with you, it will probably in the end benefit full-timers.
And I want to bring up a point. Jamie Fleming, in her latest attack video that she posted on our brother and working class hero, in my opinion, Tyler Binder.
Good friend of the show, too.
She was trying to shill this bullshit. She's saying, oh my God, they're raising the wages to $13 an hour. That's a 30% increase, and then a 50% increase over the life of the contract. That's insane. It's a great deal. It's really not, because the fact is that the Hoffa machine, the officials, the union bureaucrats, the team that she's a part of, for the past 20 years have been selling out part-timers. So we've been living with these pitiful wages. And she's like, oh, how can you expect to make a decent living as a part-timer? The reality, Jamie, is that most part-timers work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet.
Lord knows we have, yeah.
They got to drive an extra 30 minutes to each one of those jobs. And that they've been grinding it out. Really, a lot of people I know work 60 or 70 hours right now. So the fact is, that's bullshit. Any increase is going to help. But basically what they have negotiated, in a lot of places it isn't even going to match up with the minimum wage. You look at New York City, the minimum wage is going to be $15 there shortly. And in my hub, I'm a part-time steward. I see it every day. I would guess that almost 80% turnover rate is what we currently have for part-timers. So this is not really an increase. It's something that UPS has to do anyways just to keep staffing up. But the real slap in the face, you know, if you got any part-timer who's put in the years, they got 3 years, and now somebody's going to come off the street and make as much money as them. And even these new hires who are making that, in 5 years, a new hire coming off the street is going to make as much money as them. It's a slap in the face to any part-timer who's made thousands and thousands of dollars of profit for these corporate shareholders at UPS.
And let's be clear about kind of one last thing here. You know, $13 is not a living wage, okay? $10 is pitiful. $10 is poverty wages. UPS should be ashamed of that, and our union bureaucrats who've let that go on as long as Dustin has said, they should be ashamed of that too. But $13, that's not a living wage, okay? And the fact is, part-timers, a lot of people have to stay part-time because they've got kids or they've got families. The reality is people have different situations. And I've heard a lot of union bureaucrats and even regrettably some full-timers who want to talk about, well, part-timers don't deserve a living wage. They should go full-time if they expect to make real money. One, there's people who can't. But two, let's think about the reality that UPS has purposely kept people part-time. They purposely want most of their company to be part-time so that they can exploit the maximum amount of labor out of people. The reality is, most of the part-timers I know would be happy to work a 22/3 in-house job, to be full-time in the warehouse, okay? Most people would. The reality is UPS doesn't want to create those jobs. More on that in a second. So Dustin, let's move on to argument number 4 in our countdown here. We're going to touch on this a little bit in here. I think this is a big one that's been talked about a lot. Let's talk to our package drivers right now. 22/4 combo hybrid drivers, whatever you want to call them, that these 22/4 drivers will make package driver jobs better and will create more good full-time jobs at UPS. What do we have to say to that?
I just think 22/4s overall, it's a complete disaster. You know, this is a completely, it's opening Pandora's box. If you're a driver out there, instead of improving and protecting your job as a full-time package car driver, we're basically creating a second-tier driver system that has all the worst aspects of the driving job. These people are going to be able to be violated to the bone. They're going to be forced to work weekends, Saturday and Sunday. They're going to have no 9-5 protection. And for that privilege, after you've done your 5-10 years inside the warehouse and part-time poverty, guess what? You get to make $6 to $16 an hour less than a current package car driver.
Pitiful.
To work in even worse conditions. And why this is such a horrible concession, and it's really insidious. This is what's not being talked about right now. UPS can create up to 25% in any center that is currently working Tuesday through Saturday. They can add on 22-4 drivers. Well, guess what? E-commerce is exploding right now. According to UPS and financial analysts, on average, UPS is seeing 3 to 6% volume growth every quarter and year over year. What that actually means is that UPS anyways, because of this e-commerce boom, was going to be forced to create more full-time package car driver jobs. The reality is this contract is going to allow all new package car creation to come in the form of 22-4s. That is a horrible concession in and of itself, and if you think about 5% per year, it works pretty well with what exactly UPS has lined up, allowing up to 25% creation of 22-4s. On top of that, this is going to allow them to eliminate any future 22-3 job creation, because 22-4s are going to count towards that. So instead of creating new full-time package car driver jobs and a 22-3 job, they knock it out. 2 birds with 1 stone for UPS corporate shareholders. That's what they're going to get, and a lower quality job and then a lower paying job for both. It's really, really insidious.
Dustin, if I can add one thing on that too, our package guys right now need to take this very seriously. Here's the reality. This contract, and you really need to read because the devil's in the details here. It says, sure, 25% up to, that amount in each center of package car drivers can be these lesser paid 2-tier 22-4s. Okay? You know what else it says? Is that regular package car drivers have a guarantee of 8 hours a day if work is available. Oh, and the devil's in the details on that one, because since these 22-4 drivers, they have no 9-5 rights, they get paid $6 to $16 less per hour, and they have to work Saturdays and possibly Sundays. You know what's going to happen here is UPS is going to throw these guys around like rag dolls. Okay, they're going to dispatch them nonstop. They are going to pump out every residential they possibly can because people are home on the weekends, on Saturday, Sunday, and get their 2-tier lesser paid 22-4s to do that work. They'll pump out as many businesses as they can. And then guess what? As a regular package car driver, you know what's going to happen? You're going to come into work on Monday, and if your seniority is not high enough, your center manager is going to say, sorry, Joe, work's not available. You're laid off today. So you know what's going to happen? You're going to go home, and you will not even get your 8-hour guarantee there. You were guaranteed 8 hours of work's available. If no work is available, because they got these lesser paid drivers to go out and dump all the volume that you would have been delivering as a full paid regular package car driver, which was delivered by somebody else, yeah, you got to go home. You got to eat shit. That's the bottom line. So I want people to understand this 22-4 scheme is going to erode good full-time package jobs, and like Dustin said, it will eliminate good 22-3 jobs as well.
Yeah, and the reality is no part-timer wants to work this job.
Nope.
We want to work regular package car driver jobs, or in some case people want to work 22-3 jobs, or they want to stay part-time and have a decent living wage and be compensated fairly for the work they do. Jamie Fleming said, I know all these part-timers that want to work this job. Bullshit. I'm a part-time union steward. I talk to all my members. The false comparison that's like, hey, it's a step up from part-time, it's a step up from cover or utility driver. Well, I'll tell you, in the southern region, our cover drivers start out making 85% of top rate right now. If you were go 22-4, it would take you 4 years just to reach the rate that our cover drivers are already starting out at. And you're going to be forced to work weekends and all the negative things that come with that. But here's what's the most fucked up thing about this, in my opinion. They are excusing their failures to put protections on the full-time package car driver job to make that a decent job, to put in language that protects our members, and they're using that as an excuse for another concession that's going to hurt part-timers and full-timers collectively. And that's why you should not buy and swallow this 22-4 job bullshit.
Dustin, the last thing I'll say, I would love, I tell you what, I'll vote yes on this contract, and I'll accept 22-4s, and you'll get my full support if we also have written into the contract that Jamie Fleming, for the rest of her career, has to work as a 22-4, no 9-5 rights, you know, $6 to $16 less per hour, and she is going to work every Saturday and Sunday. You know what? You got my vote if we write that into the contract.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, someone who went to Georgetown School of Finance and got hired into a union disgracefully, I might add, after the fact, that person has no business telling you how to vote on this contract because they're not willing to live under these conditions.
Well, and that's a key thing here. Every single one of these points, ask yourself this: are the people that are telling you to vote yes, are they the people that are going to have to work under the concessions that they're proposing? With that, we're going to go to the next one here, the number 3 issue of shitty vote yes arguments. That is that this contract is great for feeder drivers, that it solves all your issues, it doesn't affect you, it doesn't hurt you in any way. Dave, lay the truth on us.
Okay, well look, we know a lot of feeder drivers have come out and said vote yes, but look, in my experience, Dustin and I have gone out, we've talked to a lot of feeder drivers. I think it's actually a myth that most feeder drivers support this contract. I think there's a vocal minority who support it, but I think most feeder drivers get this. But for the vocal minority, or anybody who might be kind of on the fence, let's go ahead and break this down. This contract is bad for feeder drivers for several reasons. I mean, one, you got the subcontracting language. Yes, UPS is going to create, according to the contract, 2,000 sleeper teams over the course of the 5 years. Those are pretty much the best paid jobs at UPS right now. And they will create those. But in exchange for that, the union is going to allow UPS unlimited subcontracting of rail loads, which means that they're going to bring in not only non-Teamsters, non-UPS employees to come in. You know, any Joe with a tractor trailer can subcontract with UPS and drive work that should go to Teamsters and should go, to our folks off rail yards and to UPS. The reality is that subcontracting, it is the beginning of an Uberization of the feeder department at UPS. Where, like I said, any Joe off the street, can respond to a UPS call and then start subcontracting loads. If you think your job is worth more than, an Uber driver, essentially a glorified Uber driver, you need to vote no on the contract and defend your own standards. Second, automation. Folks, we've got to really grapple with this, and I think our union leaders have been very unprepared for this. The reality is, by this McKinsey Global Institute projection in December of 2017, put on that the United States will lose approximately 73 million jobs by 2030 due to automation. And U.S. drivers, automation, technology, driverless vehicles, and drones, which this contract does nothing to protect us against, U.S. drivers could see job losses once this process really gets going at a rate of 25,000 jobs a month or 300,000 jobs a year that are going to be lost. A report by the Department of Commerce in August of 2017 estimates that driverless vehicle technology would affect and put out of work 15.5 million workers, around 1 in 9 in the United States. The reality is we need a contract that actually is going to protect us against automation. Now, if UPS does want to automate vehicles, you know what we need? Is we need the same deal that the longshoremen started doing in 1950s, where every time a container would be lifted, off of a boat onto the dock, which eliminated a lot of jobs, that the Port Authority would then pay a certain amount per container into a pension fund, and that any workers displaced by that technological change, the introduction of containers, would be paid out basically for the rest of their lives. We need a union that's going to have that vision, that forward look at what technology is going to do to our jobs and going to protect it. This contract doesn't do anything like that. So a lot of my drivers, you got to take this, the fact that there's no serious protections for your job and your welfare and your family from automation, you got to take that seriously. Third reason feeder drivers should vote no: the 70-hour work week. Look, I've been told in some parts of the country folks are already doing this, even outside of peak season, which, blows my mind. Here's the thing: why have we just resigned ourselves to the idea that since feeder drivers are paid well, that the job can't get better? That we can't have a feeder job where the drivers have more control over their own conditions? I'll tell you, the number one thing I hear from package and feeder guys is that they'd like to spend more times with their family. I mean, people have made a point about the divorce rate in the feeder department. It's almost a running joke, but it's kind of sad in Jacksonville. It's true. UPS, by working people to the bone like this, they literally tear families apart. So why don't we make feeder better? Why don't we ban the 70-hour work week? We shouldn't be writing that into the contract. Union contracts are supposed to extend more protections that the law doesn't give us. So even if the law allows UPS to work you 70 hours, fuck it. Why do we have to respect that? We should have in our contract more protections for feeder drivers, not less.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big issue we want to talk here about too as well is the issue of solidarity, the fundamental thing that unions are supposed to be based off. And the sad reality is that you have people like Jamie Fleming, you have union officials all over the country that are buying into UPS's divide and conquer tactic. They're saying, hey man, this deal doesn't affect you, you'll be fine, so fuck over the next guy who's coming after you. And look in that feeder subcontracting language. There are some protections for feeder drivers, but not if you're hired after August 1st, 2018. And that's the fundamental running theme that these officers and Vote Yes people have set up. They've set up a pyramid scheme that's only going to protect their good old boy club, the highest seniority people, and fuck the guy that comes after them. Well, I want to posit this to high seniority people and feeder drivers. This divide and conquer tactic, it's starting out right now. They're targeting part-timers. They have for years. Now they're moving on to package drivers with this 22-4. Who is going to be there? Imagine in the next contract or 2 contracts from now, they're going after you, that they're trying to automate your job or they're trying to come after your pension. And guess what? That 22-4 driver, if that goes through, that's going to be the person that's voting on your pension after you retire.
That's right.
That's going to be the person voting on what happens to the automated feeder fleet, and that is coming. Believe me, UPS, it's not coming right now, but it's coming down the pipe.
Yeah.
The only way we're going to defeat this is if we stick together, if we stand united. And there's no reason right now. We should be looking into the future. We should be providing those protections for our feeder drivers, one of the best jobs we have at UPS, and one of the core of our unions. Divide and conquer is how the ruling class destroyed our freight division. And James Hoffa, his clique, they allowed that to happen. Don't let that happen here at UPS.
Yeah, and look, if you think Dustin and I are bullshitting you right now on automation, just get online and take a look at this stuff. Take a look at where the technology is. The reality is a fully automated tractor trailer did the journey with a driver basically only getting on and off of exits, for refueling. A fully automated tractor trailer went all the way on I-10 from Los Angeles, California to our home right here in Jacksonville, Florida. That already happened. That happened at the start of the year. So if you think, that's 5 years away or 10 years away or whatever, no, the technology's here. And you better believe if we don't have protections in this contract, UPS is going to embrace it as soon as they can to reduce their labor costs, increase their profits, and put you and your family out on the street. So Dustin, let's go to number 4 here. This is a real doozy, okay? We've been hearing from Jamie Fleming, from a lot of the Vote Yes crowd, a lot of our own union bureaucrats right here in Jacksonville that, look, if you vote no, UPS is going to come back with a worse offer. Or, and this is, I really hate this argument, if you vote no, it means we're going to go out on strike and the members aren't ready or they don't want it. Dustin, what do we have to say to this bullshit?
Oh man, it's ludicrous. I can tell you from my own personal experience, I was a member of Local 804. When the last contract was negotiated, Local 804 was one of the locals that voted down their supplement. And it's really common sense. If you're negotiating and you vote down the first offer, a lot of union people know, why would you accept the first offer? It's negotiations 101. If you're going to go buy a car, you ain't going to accept the first offer from the car salesman.
You're a sucker if you do, right?
And the reality is that in practice, you can look around that most of these locals that voted down their contract actually ended up getting gains after that. Do 10 minutes of research, look at any union, any industry, in almost every circumstance, when you fight and you put the test of the company, you're actually going to win gains for the working class. In Local 804, UPS and the Hoffa machine, they said, hey, you guys can't have a 25 and out pension. Nobody else in the country has that. You have to give it up. In the last contract negotiation, they voted down their supplement because UPS was coming after that. Guess what? They protected 25 and out by voting no. And guess what? They didn't go on strike. They went back to the table. And here's the most insidious thing about this, folks. Guess what? UPS is not going to attempt a strike right before peak season in October. UPS has not prepared at all. for the possibility of a strike. So it's ludicrous to think right now that if we vote down this agreement that we're immediately going to go on strike before peak season. You know, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. The officers are saying UPS can't afford a strike, it will divert business to FedEx and Amazon, but they're ready to strike and replace you. Which one is it, folks? It's all bullshit. What's going to happen is they're going to go back to the table. And anyways, we had 93% of our members vote for strike authorization. I know Dave, myself, a lot of people we talk to, we're ready to strike if we have to. We don't want to, but hell, if that's what's got to happen, that's what's got to happen. And we're actually going to have the most leverage over peak season. So I dare UPS. I dare UPS. I'm not afraid. And Dave, talk about this, man. You know, we've been in union meetings. We've talked about this, about strike readiness, about strike preparation. What have the officers done?
Not a damn thing. And this, you know, we got to really vet some of these arguments and look at who is telling us this stuff. The reality is, anytime we've ever brought up in our local meetings, anytime, I think this goes probably across the country, anytime we've ever brought up to these officers, these vote yes union bureaucrats and stewards, that we need to start preparing. We need to tell our members, hey, guess what? Learn about your mortgage terms. You know, let's see if you've got some exemptions for strikes. You know, look at your bills. Start cutting costs. Set money aside. Build a credible strike threat. Start doing food drives, you know, to make sure that you've got food, you know, for folks who are going to be hard up in terms of a strike. Doing any kind of prep at all going into contract negotiations. We brought that forward. We've said, form a committee. You know, we'll volunteer our time. You don't even have to pay us to start working on these projects to make sure that our members are prepared in the event of a strike. And you know what we've gotten? This. Absolutely nothing. Because they tell us the strike's dead, they tell us the strike doesn't matter, they tell us the strike doesn't work, they tell us we shouldn't strike, you know, it's too scary of a thing and whatnot. But then it comes time in a contract like this when you're up against UPS, and I think what a lot of people instinctively understand is the only real weapon that we have is withholding our labor at the end of the day. So look, yeah, I mean, you know, I'd rather just get a good contract, okay? And I think by voting this thing down, I think UPS is going to have to go to the back of the table and bring us something better. I mean, word on the street is they're going to meet some of our demands in their backup agreement if this fails. But if that doesn't happen, people should be prepared to strike. And I would turn the argument back on its head. Shame on the union officials who are leveraging the greatest weapon that the working class has to defend itself and make its life better for themselves and their families. Shame on them for turning that against us.
Yeah. And let me ask this question. Let me posit it to all our listeners, all the Teamsters around the country. I know all the people right now who are slow pedaling a yes vote, who are saying, well, I'm just going to hand out the UPS Rising fucking propaganda, but I'm not taking a position. None of those people raised a fucking finger to do anything for the strike authorization vote.
No, they did not.
They have not done anything to prepare our members in the last 5 years to use the strike weapon and prepare our members to be ready for that. And in fact, most of the people peddling that shit also supported Hoffa in the last election. There's a string running through all this, folks, which, Dave, I think that kind of brings us to our fifth point.
It does. And Dustin, I want to tee this one up for you because this is the number one worst yes argument that you're going to hear. You hear it from Jamie Fleming, you hear it from your local officer vote yes officials, and you hear it from Dennis Taylor and James Hoffa Jr. himself. It is that don't kill the golden goose. Okay, UPS needs to make a profit, and they can't, you know, if we demand too much from them, if we try and win too many contract gains, we're going to put them out of business. They've got to worry about competition from Amazon, from FedEx, any number of sources. You know, you should just take what you've got and be happy with it because we don't want to kill the golden goose. A term that I hate, by the way. But Dustin, why don't you lay this out for us? Why is this argument such crap?
This is really the seed of the entire philosophy that our current Hoffa administration operates on. And it's basically that we have to collaborate with the company, that our interests are aligned with UPS. If UPS makes profit, we benefit from it. Jamie Fleming's first video, her financial analyst, it basically boiled down to the fact that, well, FedEx doesn't have a union. They're slaving their workers really effectively. So we have to agree to concessions so UPS can stay competitive with FedEx. Dave, tell me a little bit about why that is fucking bullshit.
Well, here's the thing about it. Okay, look. The reality is here I'm going to let you all in on this. The reason that UPS wants this contract passed so bad, the reason they're spending so much money trying to tell part-timers that it's in your interest, why they're trying to get full-timers to think, well, we're adding a little bit to your pension, you know, you need to screw over everybody else because it won't affect you. The reason they've just churned out the propaganda mill on this vote yes, it's actually very easy to understand. This contract, according to Dennis Taylor, is going to be worth about $14.5 billion to UPS Teamsters over the course of the 5 years of the agreement. Now, if you take current share prices and dividends that are paid out right now, shareholders, and this is a lowball estimate, okay? Remember what Dustin said earlier on about e-commerce and the growing market, okay? This is a very lowball estimate based on current numbers. Shareholders are going to get paid out $16.5 billion over the 5 years of this agreement. Basically, $2 billion more than the people like you and me that actually make this company profitable. That's the reason why UPS is working so hard for this. And it's very easy to understand why, because the shareholders, some of y'all are thinking, oh, I've got shares at UPS. You know, I'm an employee and I own some shares or whatever. Like, this will benefit me. You want to know who the shareholders are? Okay? 70% of the shareholders at UPS are financial institutions, big banks, mutual funds, and hedge funds. Okay? 70%. I think it's actually more than that at this point. They are under institutional ownership. It's not you, the shareholder. It's not a bunch of random people with their 401ks. It's these giant banks, these giant, you know, enormous financial institutions. Now, check this out. You know what? 60% of those financial institutions that own UPS also own FedEx. And I bet what the number with Amazon is probably even more than that. I haven't done the numbers in a while. Dustin and I wrote an article a while ago, and you can Google search it. The reality is, Wall Street has several golden gooses right now. They've got UPS, they've got FedEx, they've got Amazon, they've got all these other companies that in one way or another they own through owning the majority of the shares in these companies. So the reality is Wall Street doesn't really care if the golden goose gets killed at UPS or whatever, because they can always use FedEx to try and bid down our standards and our wages at UPS. Okay? That's the reality, is that shareholders are going to make a boatload of money off of this contract. So here's what our plan would look like, is that if you raised part-timers' wages, and this was all you did, you just raised part-timers' wages by $5 an hour across the country, you would now have a situation where $18.75 billion in this contract would be going to the employees over the 5 years, $12.25 billion would be going to the shareholders. Basically, shareholders are going to still be making plenty of money. They're going to be making plenty of profits. The reality is that money will all go to them unless we stand and we fight for a better contract.
Well, and the devil is in the details, folks. The same people who haven't done anything. Hoffa's been in power for almost 20 years. He hasn't prepared any contract gains. He hasn't prepared any contract committees. And here's the dirty fact. He hasn't done anything, not a damn thing, to organize our core industries. So he's allowing Wall Street to basically beat us with this weapon that says, oh, our interests are aligned, we have to compete with the company.
That's right.
The reality is that we should not accept concessions. UPS is not going to go bankrupt in 5 years. What's going to happen, if we got that $5 bump, if we improve driver jobs, guess what? That's actually going to benefit the union. You know, Dave and I did a little bit of math. If you got a $5 an hour raise for every part-timer at UPS, that's about 132,000 to 150,000 part-timers. That's going to be $1.6 million in dues money per month. That's going to be almost $20 million per year. The union could go and hire 400 organizers around the country to go after, and in the next 5 years,
$50,000 a year.
You could go and set up 400 organizers around the country to organize FedEx and Amazon and take away that competition argument, to increase our bargaining power, to increase the number of Teamsters around the country. They just don't have the vision or the willpower to do it. The best thing that we can do for our industry, for our working class Teamsters, is raise the standards and show working class people all over the country that being union pays off, that it's worthwhile, that you can actually fight and improve your life, not sell out your members in a pyramid scheme bullshit.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. But here's the reality. Who is telling you to vote yes? you look at James Hoffa, you look at Jamie Fleming. These people have never worked a day in their life as a working class Teamster. These people are not the ones that are in the warehouse in 115 degrees, lifting 70 to 150 pound packages. They are not the people who have to work a 70-hour work week during peak, who don't get to see their family and their kids. They're people who've been living on the high hog. They've been getting paid $100,000 a year to set and shuffle some papers around, and they're going to tell you what's best for you. Bullshit. We are the people who do the labor. We are the people who watch our friends be carried out of that warehouse in an ambulance, something I've seen 3 times this year in my building. You are the people who actually have families out there. You don't see your kids who have to suffer through divorces, through the hardships that every UPSer goes through. This is our time to stand up as Teamsters and say no more. The money is there. We ain't going to cry poor for the company. We're going to represent what our members want.
Yeah, folks, if UPS is making record profits right now and crying about how they don't have enough money to give you raises, what's it going to be like if the economy crashes? Okay, what are they going to demand from you then? Okay, if you don't get your money, you don't stand up for yourself right now in this moment, if we don't fight for what we've earned with our hands, I mean, the reality is you ain't going to fight for it, certainly when conditions go bad. The truth is we do incredible labor, like Dustin's saying. I mean, peak season is one of the greatest feats of human engineering, okay, that happens every year, not just at UPS, but in the post office and all over, you know, in every parcel delivery. The fact that we're able to deliver goods to people across this country, it's amazing the amount of work that we do. But we know it's not managers who do that work. It's not Wall Street and the banks that are getting paid out in shareholder dividends, you know, who do that work. It's us who slave away in the warehouse and out on the road every single day to make this company profitable. So the reality is, if you want a better life for yourself and for your family, you got to vote no on this. Now, Dustin, briefly, we've talked a little bit about it. Look, you know, yeah, you could go out and you could organize Amazon and FedEx workers just on the increase in dues you'd get from a $5 raise alone. Let's talk about some of the other things that we want to see in a contract. Let's get rid of the 22-4 scheme. You know what nobody has ever been able to explain to me? Even if they defend the 22-4 jobs, even if they say, okay, these are all right jobs and whatnot, nobody can actually explain to me why we would do this as opposed to just creating another package car job. Because, yeah, look, we want to relieve drivers of overtime, okay? I mean, look, I'm totally in favor of that. But, you know, the way you do that is by making the 9-5 list an opt-out list instead of an opt-in, where basically everybody starts on 9-5. The guys who want overtime can opt out. They get their overtime. And then UPS has to reckon with the fact that, well, we've got a bunch of volume. We need to hire more drivers because everybody else is on the 9-5 list, and they're going to get paid out at triple time if we go over 9-5 on them. So you know what's going to happen? That will create more full-time package jobs, not 22-3 or 22-4 pyramid schemes where people are getting paid less. You know, the other thing we need, more 22-3 jobs, correct, the combo warehouse jobs. The reality is, and I hope everybody realizes this, every time a new hire walks in that building, okay, every time you see somebody who's brand new getting hired off the street, that is a 22-3 job that the company could have created but chose not to. Yep. They could have just taken an existing part-timer and had them work that extra job, but they chose not to. You know why? Because of greed. Because they want to keep most of us part-time. The reality is, let's vote this 22-4 crap down. Let's get more full-time package jobs. Let's relieve them of overtime by fixing the 9-5 list. And let's get more 22-3s in the building, because that is a good job. That's something that I know everybody would prefer to work.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to vote down this fucking shit agreement. So this coming week is going to be very important for Teamsters all over the country. So we urge everybody out there, the next 5 years of your life, devote the next 5 days of your life to make sure that you improve your conditions. I want to give a special shout out here in Jacksonville to our Teamsters United chapter. We had stewards, we had activists coming out, flyering, getting engaged like never before, making the union what it should be. It's not about the union hall, it's not about a couple of officers, it's about us, the members. And all the activists that we have that have come out who said, I'm going to take charge of my life, I'm going to take up the mantle and the fight of the union. I give a salute to you guys, and I look forward to working with you this week.
All right, folks, so the Worker Power Hour is back. I'd like you to go to the iTunes podcast app, and you can the Apple podcasting app. Subscribe to our show. You can get it on the Google Play Store. You can get it on our website, wphpodcast.com. We are recording a special episode this week. In addition to this video, you're going to hear a deep dive on the contract. If this wasn't enough for you, me and Dustin, we're going to tear the whole thing apart. Tear it inside out and tell you what we need out of a good agreement. So tune into the podcast. We appreciate y'all joining us in this video. Union Power.
Union Power.